Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah, it's still connecting. I think there's something wrong with me. Yeah. Sorry. It's not connecting earlier. It's probably related to all this going on
Stand.
Did it stop?
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
Is it still on?
When you said did it stop, I don't know what you did with that trip. Now it's back on, yes.
Okay.
I don't know. If it's on, it's on.
Thank you for checking.
This is still on.
It's still on.
All right, very good. Praise Yahweh. It's a little technical difficulty there, but anyway, I'd just like to greet everybody and say Shabbat Shalom to each and every one that's here and those who are viewing and streaming. Before I begin, I just want to say that my mind was going on something else, and my mother asked me what I was going to do a study on, and I really had no idea. And I was thinking of something else and going a different way, and this didn't come to me until like yesterday late afternoon, and it's because of something I heard on the radio, which took me back to the study that David did, and also touches on what Johan spoke on last week. But the title I gave this is "Let It Go," and what is it? Well, it causes us to sin. It weighs us down, and it's like an anchor to hold us in place sometimes, if not sink us. It's a tempter to us and causes us to become irrational. We don't think right. And what it is anger. And when David spoke, he spoke on being temperate and being discreet, and it brought up a lot of discussion on anger. And so I thought I'd just touch on that because we were speaking on that and with one another during the service and afterwards. We'll start off with one of the obvious cases, and that is in Genesis 4. And it gives us an example of this causing us to sin. And everybody knows the story of Cain and Abel, but I'll go ahead and read it anyway, since it's, like I said, it's one of the obvious examples that we have. In Genesis 4, verse 1, and the man knew Eve, his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I've gotten a man with the help of Yahweh. And again she bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought of the fruit of the ground an offering unto Yahweh. And Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock and of the fat of it. And Yahweh had respect to Abel and to his offering, but to Cain, to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very angry, and his face fell. And Yahweh said to Cain, why are you angry? And why has your face fallen, or your countenance? If you do well, shall it not be lifted up? And if you do not well, sin crouches at the door, and to you shall be his desire. But you should rule over him. And Cain told Abel his brother. And it came to pass, when they were in the field, that Cain rose up against Abel his brother and killed him. This anger, it causes us to sin. Yahweh says, be angry, but sin not. We remember when David became angry with Yahweh when Yahweh struck Uzzah and killed him. But what did David do about it? He didn't accuse Yahweh. He was just upset. Perhaps he felt strongly towards Uzzah as a friend, as a friend, or had a close relationship. But when Yahweh struck him dead because Uzzah was obviously clearly in the wrong, David was upset, angry about it, but he did not accuse Yahweh. And I'd use that as an example as being angry but not sinning, because there's no mention. Yahweh didn't bring it up against him later on. Sin weighs you down and is like an anchor to us. He holds you in place, if not sinks you. We'll go to Deuteronomy 3. Another obvious example. Deuteronomy 3. Deuteronomy 3, and we'll begin reading in verse 23. And this is the account that this is Moses speaking to Israel. This is the last time when he spoke to Israel. This Deuteronomy is his final, some say, a sermon to Israel, when he recounts their journey, their history, and everything. And Moses failed to follow the instruction that Yahweh gave him. He was righteous. He had anger, and it was righteous indignation because of Israel's sin and Israel's complaining and so on. So he was justly angry, but it caused him to sin. And in this case, this sin held him in place. Verse 23, and I pleaded with Yahweh all that time, saying, O sovereign Yahweh, you have begun to show me your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what else is there in heaven or in earth that can do according to your works and according to your mighty acts? Let me go over, I pray you, and see the good land that is beyond the Jordan, that good mountain and Lebanon. But Yahweh was angry with me for your sake, and listened not to me. And Yahweh said to me, let it be enough for you. Speak no more to me of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah, and lift up your eyes westward, and northward, and southward, and eastward, and behold with your eyes, for you shall not go over the Jordan. But charge Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land, which you shall see. So we remained in the valley across from Beth Peor. Moses was prohibited because of sin, and it caused him to be held in place, effectively ending his usefulness and purpose. And so there he died. Now, in anybody else's case, in the rest of us, Moses had a very close relationship with Yahweh, but we can be held back in sin, stuck in sin, bound to sin, if we allow anger to rule us. Anger is a tempter. Let's go to 1 Samuel. 1 Samuel 25. First Samuel 25 will begin we'll begin at verse 3. Now the name of the man was Nabal, and the name of his wife Abigail. And the woman was of good understanding and of a beautiful appearance, but the man was hostile and evil in his doings. And he was of the house of Caleb. And David heard in the wilderness that Nabal was shearing his sheep, and David sent 10 young men. And David said to his young men, go up to Carmel, and go to Nabal, and greet him in my name. And thus shall you say to him that lives in prosperity, peace be to you, and peace be to your house, and peace be to all that you have. And now I have heard that you have shears. Your shepherds have now been with us, and we did them no hurt, neither was there anything of theirs missing, all the while they were in Carmel. Ask your young men, and they will tell you. Therefore let the young men find favor in your eyes, since we come in a good day. Give, I pray you, whatever comes to your hand, to your servant and to your son David. And when David's young men came, they spoke to Nabal according to all these words in the name of David, and ceased. So these young men did what David had said. And verse 10, I'll just go ahead and keep reading. And Nabal answered David's servants and said, who is David, and who is the son of Jesse? There are many servants nowadays that break away every man from his master. Shall I then take my bread and my water and my flesh that I have killed for my shears and give it to the men of whom I know not where they are? So David's young men turned on their way and went back and came and told him according to all these words. And David said to his men, every man put on his sword, and every man put on his sword. And David also put on his sword. And there went up after David about 400 men, and 200 remained by the baggage. David was angry. He took offense to this and became very angry. Verse 14, but one of the young men told Abigail, Nabal's wife, saying, behold, David sent messengers out of the wilderness to salute our master, and he railed at them. But the men were very good to us, and we were not hurt, neither did we miss anything, as long as we went with them. When we were in the field, they were a wall to us, both by night and by day, all the while we were with them, keeping the sheep. Now therefore know and consider what you will do, for evil is determined against our master and against all his house, for he is such a worthless fellow that one cannot speak to him. Then Abigail hurried and took 200 loaves and 2 bottles of wine and 5 sheep, already dressed, and 5 measures of parched grain and 100 clusters of raisins, 200 cakes of figs, and laid them on asses. And she said to her young men, go on before me. Behold, I will come after you. But she told not her husband Nabal. And it was so, as she rode on her ass and came down by the covert of the mountain, that behold, David and his men came down towards her, as she met them. Now David had said, surely in vain have I kept all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing was missed of all that pertained to him. And he has returned to me evil for good. Yes, David did do good. He did a good thing for Nabal. And Nabal wasn't neighborly and he wasn't kind, and he acted accordingly. But that offense made David angry to the point that he was taking matters into his own hands. He says, may Elohim do so to the enemies of David, and more also if I leave any that pertains to him by the morning light, so much as one man child. So he was determined to destroy this man utterly. And when Abigail saw David, she hurried and came down from her ass and fell down before David on her face and bowed herself to the ground. And she fell at his feet and said, upon me, my superior, upon me is the iniquity. And let your handmaid, I pray you, speak in your ears and hear the words of your handmaid. Do not let my sovereign, I pray you, regard this worthless fellow, even Nabal, for as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, your handmaid, saw not the young men of my leader, whom you did send. Now therefore, my leader, as Yahweh lives, and as your soul lives, seeing Yahweh has withheld you from blood guiltiness, she recognized this, and from avenging yourself with your own hand. Now therefore let your enemies and them that seek evil to you, to my sovereign, be as Nabal. And now this present which your servant has brought to my leader, let it be given to the young men that followed my ruler. Forgive, I pray you, the trespass of your handmaid, for Yahweh will certainly make my sovereign a sure house, because my leader fights the battles of Yahweh, and evil shall not be found in you all your days. And though a man has risen up to pursue you and to seek your soul, yet the soul of my superior shall be bound in the bundle of life with Yahweh your Elohim, and the souls of your enemies. Them shall he sling out as from the hollow of a sling. Well, let's get down to verse 32, where after she says all these things to David, David said to Abigail, blessed be Yahweh the Elohim of Israel, who sent you this day to meet me, and blessed be your discretion, and blessed be you that has kept me this day from blood guiltiness. David recognized at that moment that he was taking matters into his own hand. He would have been guilty for the lives of all of these people, because he let his anger get the best of him, and he was going to take this slight of Nabal and avenge himself. Anger causes us to become irrational. Luke 15, 17. Luke 15:17, and this is the story of the prodigal son. We're not going to read through it. In the last one concerning David, I just put down the reference. I didn't pick the passages I want to emphasize, so I ended up reading pretty much the whole thing. But in this case, we'll start at 17. And this is the young man, after he had gone away and spent his inheritance and living in a foreign land and everything. He finally came to his senses when he was, feeding the hogs. So verse 17, but when he came to himself, came to his senses, he said, how many hired servants of my father have bread enough and to spare, and I perish with hunger? I will rise and go to my father and will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no more worthy to be called your son. Make me as one of your hired servants. And he arose and came to his father, but while he was yet afar off, his father saw him and was moved with compassion and ran and fell on his neck and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and in your sight. I am no more worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, bring forth quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and make merry. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to be merry. Now his older brother was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called to him one of the servants and inquired what these things might be. And he said to him, your brother is come, and your father has killed the fatted calf, because he has received him safe and sound. But he was angry and would not go in, and his father came out and entreated him. But he answered and said to his father, lo, these many years I served you, and I never transgressed a commandment of yours, and yet you never gave me a kid, that I might make merry with my friends. But when this your son Cain, who has devoured your living with harlots and killed for him the fatted calf, and he said to him, son, you are ever with me, and all that is mine is yours. But it was proper to make merry and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive again, and was lost and is found. In each of these cases, well, especially in this one and the one in David, it was personal offense that motivated them. Here, he's not seeing the bigger picture, and that is his brother has returned. His brother was lost. His brother was dead spiritually. If a person was dead and resurrected, that would be an event. And here his brother basically returned from the dead, from a foreign land, who was lost, but he couldn't see it because he was personally offended because I don't get the fatted calf. He was thinking of himself. And that's kind of the root to this problem with anger.
Yeah, and as I read these, I see a common theme here. I don't want to derail you from your topic, but there was someone else that had to talk them off the cliff for their anger.
Mm-hmm.
Abigail had to talk to David and say, hey, don't do this, because he was not in the right state of mind to understand where he was going to fall and fall.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing, the father had to talk the other son off the cliff. It's like, let me explain to you and calm him down. In most cases, when people are angry, it's almost hard for them to rationalize in their mind what's going on at the time. But someone else can do that and calm them down and take them out of that state. And I think that's more of the story also. When people trying to keep themselves from being angry, boy, those of us that have mastered that ability, trying to talk them off of that cliff and to explain to them and show them through the scripture of how what they're about to do is not right.
Right.
So it's like both, it's hand in hand.
Yes.
Those themselves have to do it, and those that are the brethren or a watcher or keeper of the brethren also.
Yeah, we are our brother's keeper.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, David. Yeah, we are our brother's keeper when we look out for one another in the.
Before you move on,
Yeah. Yes.
I just want to say about the prodigal son story.
About.
The prodigal son story.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And it was a question. I mean, there's a message there for fathers too, or for parents in general. You know what I'm saying? Because not all parents would accept their kids back like so easy.
Yeah, it's a lesson for us, and that's kind of,
We know that the Father and the story's supposed to be like the heavenly Father, but I don't know, my father died very young. So and it just that's makes me think of things like that.
yes. There's, yeah, indeed, there are many lessons in this, and we have the responsibility of, the father obviously didn't allow his son's actions to cause him to become angry. A person could say, I told you so, and be angry with how that person lived, but he received him back. He had compassion. It's clearly stated that he had compassion on him. When he saw him from afar, he had compassion on him. So he wasn't motivated by anger, but it was, you could say that the fruit of the Spirit was evident in his actions towards his son. He was glad, he saw his son as dead, in his mind and in his heart, his son no longer existed. But when his son came back, for him, that was a cause of rejoicing, a cause of joy. And so and I was going to get into that a little bit, when my experience, I was when my mother joined Worldwide, I was 10, and when we left, it's just before I turned 18. And I saw a lot of young people just utterly give up and leave. And the thing is because of the things like the hypocrisy and things like that they saw, they became angry, and they didn't just take it out on, they took it out on Yahweh, rejected Yahweh altogether. And that's kind of some of the things that Scripture warns us about, is because ultimately that's where it leads us, away from Yahweh, into sin. But that's kind of a different subject. I mean, it's really, it can touch on this, but I'm not going to get too much into that. But what are the things that within us? What are some of the things within us? The thing within us that triggers anger, and we've touched on a couple of these. Well, pride. When we're arrogant, pride, we think we have the answers. We think we're right. We think we know. We take offense to challenges, and people are triggered to anger. When people are offended, David was offended when Nabal David did this good thing. Do we become angry when we do something good and person returns to evil for the good that we do? And these are all things we have to learn how to address.
Envy, perhaps?
Pardon?
Envy, perhaps?
Envy, yes, envy. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I want to just say in defense of Nabal there, you might remember King Saul, because one priest gave some food to David, he had all those priests killed. Nabal might have been thinking, if I help David, I'm going to make enemies with Saul, and Saul might come and kill me. So I'm just saying that in defense of Nabal's action.
Yeah, Nabal.
If he was to feed David and that's to get back to Saul, definitely Saul would kill Nabal.
And that's a valid argument. But it seems that in this case, he was more motivated by selfishness against David than I'm worried about being killed. Yes.
Bill, on what Tony just said, driving anger could be fear.
Yes. And fear, that fear can be a trigger. Well, I didn't think about that. Fear could be a trigger to anger. And you have a point there. I'll think about that. I didn't think of that one. But the most common things are when we take personal offense to something, we take it like it's against me, and that's what motivates our anger. I often think about the fruit of the Spirit. I often say that they're selfless in its character and nature. We have to become a new creature in Messiah, so therefore it's less about us. You see, and I think that goes to some of the things that we read when it says, seeing others is better than ourselves. That doesn't mean, the worst sinner in the world. But when you look at people who are lost in sin, what do you see? What do we see when we see a person lost in sin? What do you see when, remember I spoke about enemies. When you're looking at this person who's seeking to destroy you, what do you see? You see somebody you need to destroy? Or do you see somebody that's lost? Somebody that's lost. They have no hope for the future. They have no sight for what's beyond this existence. You know, they're lost in darkness. Yes, Raquel.
Yeah, so you were asking about like what triggers anger. I'm thinking more like why people hold on to anger
Yes.
for a long time.
Well, and that's the selfishness in us. You know, we can't let things go. That's why I call this "let it go." You know, we have to let these things go because we're useless to Yahweh if we cannot let these things go. If we take personal offense to everything, we cannot progress. We cannot move forward. I was originally going to go with speaking about our personal journey and how is it that we're all here, not in this building, but where we are in our spiritual walk. Why are we here? And I was thinking about riding a bicycle. When you get on a bicycle, whether it's a single gear or multi-gear, once you get on the bicycle and start pedaling, you cannot go backwards. On a multi-gear, it just spins. And on a single gear, what does it do? It brakes. You get on a bike, you cannot go. Once you start moving forward on this track, you gotta go. You can't stand still. When you try to stand still on a bike, what? You fall. So anyway, that's what I was thinking about speaking about, but now I'm just dealing with this, so I don't want to get off on that. But Jacob 4. It speaks about anger. So James chapter 4. And I'm just bringing these things up because we want to address mostly in dealing with it. All of us have issues. You know, we all get triggered. Certain things happen. I noticed that driving truck has made me calmer. You have to be. But there are days when people just do something and I just say, you know, you idiot, you moron, you know, you imbecile, and you just man. And I've said many times, you know, my sister years ago, Renita, when she had her license for a few years, but we were going somewhere and she was driving and a person cut her off and she, you know, Renita used to have a quick temper, but as she got older, it got more mellow, but she says, that's why I'm glad I don't have the power of resurrection. She said, because I would have killed that person and then brought him back and told him, don't ever do that again. you know.
Did you learn your lesson?
Yeah, did you learn your lesson? You know, so we have to really learn to bring how do we deal with it? And that's what I'm trying to get to because of the conversation we had last week, you know, afterwards we were talking about some of the things, not last week, but before when David was speaking about temperance and being temperate and being discreet. Jacob chapter 4. From where come wars and from where come fightings among you? Come they not from here, even your pleasures at war in your members? Let me see. I had a different version to look up because of how it was worded. I was going to read it here. You lust and have not, you kill and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war. You have not because you ask not. Let me go back to verse 1. It is from within us. It is our personal desires and the things that we want that cause us to be at conflict with other people. And that's why I emphasize all the time, we have to be more selfless in our character and nature if we're going to be instruments in Yahweh's hand. And that's the example of all the things. Yahshua's ministry was a ministry of selflessness, and he showed that even by the giving of his life. And so we have to bring ourselves into subjection to Yahweh's word so that we do not respond to our desires and passions and so on and so forth against others. And that's where a lot of this angers and divisions and things like it comes from our own desires and the things in our heart. Come not they from here, even your pleasures that war in your members, our flaws, our selfish personalities and flaws and so on. You lust and have not. You kill and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war. You have not because you ask not. You ask and receive not because you ask amiss. It's not according to Yahweh's will and Yahweh's word. When we study the word of Almighty Yahweh, again, as I said, this is the mirror that we look at. And what do we see? What do we reflect? When we look into this mirror, that's when we know what we need to ask for. You know, we're not looking at in a physical mirror where we see and we're, oh yeah, you know, I look good, so on and so forth. But when we look in the mirror of the word of Almighty Yahweh, how well do we reflect the Messiah? Do we see that we're not loving? Do we see that we're not compassionate? David did not have compassion. David was offended. He had no compassion on Abel. He was determined to kill everybody. And he was, by being pointed out to him, he realized he would have been guilty. Remember that our witness, our lives are not our own, and the conduct of our lives should reflect Yahshua the Messiah. And if we spend our time serving ourselves, well, are we not doing the work of the adversary? He wanted to serve himself. He was serving himself when he said, I will ascend, I will sit on the throne. It was all for his exaltation. And so we have to be aware in our conduct and what we do. And in order to not go through experience this kind of this anger, which is very self-serving. Now there is indignant. Moses went through that anger. His anger was, it was righteous anger on Yahweh's behalf. But because he didn't control it, and when David was speaking about that, he didn't bring it under control, he sinned against Yahweh. Shall I bring forth water from this rock? He did not give Yahweh the glory. And then he struck the rock instead of speaking to it. Yes, David?
No, I was going to say Scripture and Yeshua in Matthew 24 warns us of what is to come in regards to hatred. You know, the love of many will wax cold during the end time. That warning is for us to heed it as, where does, hatred come from? Where does the loss of love come from? It's the anger.
Right.
That drives that hatred and that loss of love. And so we have to cut it off at the root before it gets started. We shouldn't be angry with one another. We shouldn't drive towards hatred with one another, because it's foretold that it's going to run rampant across the world.
Right.
But it shouldn't be in us. That's the world that's in
Right.
us.
Right.
So we got to take heed of what has been foretold, that it is going to get worse, and you need to be mindful of your actions and your hands.
Right. Right. We have to learn how to deal with this, because anger in itself, when I was doing this study, it occurred to me, what exactly was introduced into Adam and Eve in taking of the fruit of knowing the good and the evil? Because if they were made in Yahweh's image and in his likeness, Yahweh is love, his character, merciful, and so on. You can think of the character, the attributes of Yahweh. And so Adam and Eve were made, but the one thing they didn't have was anger. There was no reason for it. There was no purpose for anger. But I think that was part of knowing the good and knowing the evil, because as was described in Genesis 4, he says that sin crouches at the door, and its desire, and who's behind sin is the adversary, is for you. Well, they had no knowledge of that. And the anger is what motivated Cain to kill his brother. Jealousy. Anger provoked by jealousy. So, almost got sidetracked by the word jealousy. So let us continue. Some of the passages of scriptures that I wanted to go through and look up here are things that help us and that we have to keep in mind, in the forefront of our mind, in considering in dealing with anger. So I like to go to Ephesians 4:26. Now Ephesians, just like here in James addresses issues of anger, but we'll go to Ephesians 4. Ephesians 4:26. 26 and 27. It says, be angry and sin not. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. We can be angry. But when David was pointing out, he says, if we get to the point where we become angry, the next thing is we have to control that anger. Be angry, but don't transgress, don't sin. Moses, again, has righteous indignation because of the sin of Israel, but he lost control. It wasn't the anger that was the sin, it's what he did in his anger. And that's why he said, I was angry for your sake, is what he said in Deuteronomy. Be angry and sin not, let not the sun go down in your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Isn't that what Cain was warned of? You know, when a person smiles, it's like you light up, face lit up, but when your face falls, your face falls, the brows come down, your mouth turns down, angry. And it's an opposite look of smiling and happiness and joy. His face fell, he became angry. With this in mind, we'll go down to verse 30 and 32 in Ephesians 4. And grieve not the Holy Spirit. Being angry, yes.
Now, I was just do you have Luke there when it's about James and John in some Samaritan village? Do you have that?
Do I have which one?
In Luke 2.
Okay, I have Luke 6, but I don't have Luke 2.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Go ahead, you can read it though.
So it's it's Luke 9. Luke
Okay.
9:51. It was when Yeshua and a couple of his apostles went to a Samaritan village, but they did not receive him because his face was set for the journey to Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Master, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them just as Elijah did? But he turned and rebuked them and said, you do not know what manner of spirit you are of.
Right, because Joshua wasn't offended. And they weren't following his example. They took it upon themselves. They were offended, so they felt like, we need to punish these people. We need to destroy this place. So Joshua, what spirit are you of? It's not a spirit of mercy, compassion, love, And again, they were with Joshua, but look at where their mind was. So thank you. They took offense. Ephesians 4:30. I'm sorry. Verse 30. And grieve not the Holy Spirit of Yahweh, in which you were sealed to the day of redemption. Let all bitterness and wrath and anger and clamor and railing be put away from you, and all malice. And be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving each other, even as Yahweh also in the Messiah forgave you. We have to have a spirit of forgiveness and mercy, patience, compassion. And we have to put these things to practice among ourselves so that we can master it and then carry this out to the world. It's not, some places it's just limited to within their congregation, and they become an island to themselves. I was part of a place like that. They were an island to themselves, and love was for the brethren. and then they spend a lot of time judging people outside of that congregation. Is that what Yahshua, is that our calling? Is that what we're to do? To just love one another, care for just one another? You know, Yahweh so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. We have to keep in mind and follow the example that Yahshua Messiah said at all times. As we'll go to Luke 6:31, because these are all related to this in Ephesians 4. Be angry and sin not. Luke 6:31. Luke 6. I'm not trying to repeat some of the things that David went over, but this is all related. So I'm kind of filling in different things because David was concentrating on, you know, practicing that temperance, you know, and dealing with these issues. Luke 6:31. And as you would that men should do to you, do you also to them likewise. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is a wise instruction for if you're an angry person, you should expect it back. But most people that are angry do things and then they feel that they were done unjustly when it comes back on them. And then the cycle continues. In their anger, they go after this person. This person retaliates. This person gets mad at them. What vicious circle? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Is that a guarantee that it happened? No, but Yahweh knows, and Yahweh will complete that circle. So even if the other person doesn't treat you in kind, Yahweh will. So we have to remember that. Yahweh says vengeance belongs to him, and Yahweh rewards us for doing the right thing. We'll go back to James real quick. And I'll complete because I started in verse 1 and took off from there and went to Ephesians. Well, actually, we'll go to James 1. I was in James 4, but we'll go to James 1. My mind's kind of racing here, everybody. I'm sorry. And my pages are sticking together. There we go. James 1, verse 19. You know this, my beloved brethren, but let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to anger. For the wrath of man works not the righteousness of Yahweh. We have to remember that at all times. And I would ask you, you know, to review the be temperate, be discreet, because there's those steps we have to go through. You know, we are human. We will get angry. Sometimes we do lose control, but the actions. And in David's case, Yahweh delivered him from fulfilling that action. And so if we strive to please Yahweh, I believe that Yahweh will give us every opportunity, unless we have determined in our own heart to complete it. I think Yahweh will give us every opportunity to turn from the course that we have set ourselves on. So, as to not complete what we have set our mind to do. The wrath of man works not the righteousness of Yahweh. So we have to resign ourselves to be that instrument in Yahweh's hand for his good works, because Yahshua will be the instrument. Yahshua will do the judging when he comes the second time. It's not for us to do that. Let's see, we'll go to Proverbs 29, and these are some passages that, again, we should keep in mind that help us out when we do become angry. I'm sorry, Proverbs 19, my apologies. Proverbs 19. to anger, it says. And in verse 9, Proverbs 19:11, the discretion of a man makes him slow to anger. And it is his glory to pass over a transgression. That is the hard thing, is letting go of something when somebody does something to you. The hard thing is to let it go. We always want to get, our ounce of revenge, our pound of flesh, so to speak. And then we're willing to let it go after we do something. But Yahweh says no. And so it is our glory to pass over a transgression, to let something go. And remember, I do this all the time. I say, no one is getting away with anything. I tell my wife that. I tell the kids, they say, this person is. Don't worry about it. No one is getting away with anything. Yahweh knows. And knowing that Yahweh knows, and knowing what Yahweh can do, you should pray for that person. Have compassion on that person. Yes, David.
I mean, we all know that we all will have to hold account for everything that we do, every idle word.
Right.
And so we think about it for ourselves. I'm going to have to be held accountable for what I did.
Right.
Apply that to the other person. They are going to have
They're going to be accountable for what they do.
Every idle
Right.
word they say. So don't worry about them.
Right. And see, Stephen, being stoned, said, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. He's being stoned. They're murdering him. What did he do? He just spoke the truth. Yahshua, being innocent, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Do we have the faith in Yahweh? Do we have that determination within us to not be ruled by anger? That we would actually say, Father Yahweh, bring unto them their deeds. Strike them down. Yahweh knows, and Yahweh is able. He's able to deliver, but he's also just, and he also will avenge. Psalm 37. Psalm 37. Holding on to anger is not good. Holding on to anger affects you mentally, affects you physically. It skews your thinking. It's detrimental to our spiritual lives. Psalm 37, and we'll read verses 8 and 9. Cease from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself. Don't worry about it. Hard to do. In this flesh, our human nature, sometimes it's hard to do. Fret not yourself. It tends only to evil doing. When you worry about it, you're constantly dwelling on it, you're thinking about it, pretty soon you're saying, I'm going to do something. So we have to cease from these things. For evildoers shall be cut off, but those that wait for Yahweh, they shall inherit the earth. Well, what does that bring to mind? It takes you to Matthew, doesn't it? Blessed are the peacemakers, and so on and so forth. Evildoers shall be cut off. And what? Anger, sin crouches at the door. It's a temptation to us all. It's when you're mad, you feel justified. You feel, I have the right. Now, do you really? Our lives are not our own. The person that you're angry at, they're a creation of Yahweh. Their life that they have, that breath they have, comes from Yahweh. Thank you. We're in Proverbs. We'll go to 29:11. Proverbs 29:11. Try and get through these real quick. And I tried to look up passages that certainly that relate to each other or expound upon one another, but Proverbs 29:11. That was at 19. There it is, 29:11. A fool utters all his anger, but a wise man keeps it back and stills it, controls it. Be angry, but don't sin. A fool utters his anger. They just gotta say it. They just gotta, I feel. But a wise man keeps it back and stills it, controls his anger, he controls himself, he controls what? That tongue that starts many fires, that little member that steers a ship. How great a vessel, but that little rudder turns that great vessel. Be angry, but sin not, and let it go. Ecclesiastes 7:9. Be not hasty in your spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools. I knew a man many years ago. We were in Worldwide. He was the father of one of my friends, and he had a very bad temper. He was a very nice man, would help you, do things for you, but the moment he lost his temper, tools began to fly, profanities began to fly. And I mean, it was Jekyll and Hyde kind of crazy, you know, and he was just a different person. But over the years, now I was away from him for many years when we moved to Louisiana and all. But when I went back to California, and over time, I was back around him. And one time I did something, and I knew my goose was cooked. And when he caught up with me, he was fuming, but he handled the whole thing different from what he would have in the past. And I saw the working of the Spirit in this man, because he was different. He was angry, but he didn't resort to violence, and he didn't resort to profanity. But all I remember him saying is that if it wasn't for the person that was traveling with me, he would have left me sitting there in the desert, because I didn't listen to him, you know. I just thought I knew better. And so, but that really stood out to me, and it showed me that when a person does, they put it into Yahweh's hands. And he struggled, he worked with himself. So he was a different person than I knew than when my early teens to my early adulthood, when I was in my 20s. And I was just awed with how Yahweh had worked with him to change that temper. So there are other passages that we could read, but I would encourage to look some of these up, and you can type in anger, not wrath. Wrath, it deals with the wrath of Yahweh, which is Yahweh's righteous indignation. But anger is something that each one of us we deal with and we face. But like I said, I often think about, is this one of the things? What things that were not part of Yahweh, were not pertaining to Yahweh? Yahweh knew anger, but Yahweh chooses who he will be. I will be who I will be. He chooses righteousness, and he sets the standard of righteousness in himself. But Yahweh doesn't choose anger. That's a byproduct of rebellion against him. Then he says, okay, now he has to deal with his wrath and his anger. Yes, right.
Yeah, he described himself as slow to anger.
He's slow to anger.
But he's merciful.
And merciful, patient, long-suffering.
Yeah,
These are the attributes and the character traits of Almighty Yahweh. And so this is how we have to conduct ourselves. And because we do not do the work of Yahweh. We can think we're doing the work of Yahweh. Yahweh does his work through us. He chose Israel. He says why he chose Israel. They were the least. And it is through Israel that he was going to manifest himself to the nations. Israel wasn't doing it on their own. They were not, okay, we're going to represent Yahweh. No, Yahweh was using Israel to represent himself. And that's the same thing with us. But we have to overcome ourselves first. We have to overcome our character, our flawed nature. Let the Spirit of Yahweh work through us, and Yahweh will do his work through us individually. And we each one, this is individual walk. We work together, we support one another, we edify one another, encourage one another as a body. But when that day comes, it's only you and you alone standing before that seat. I'm not going to be there. You know, Yolanda isn't going to be there saying, oh, you know, this, you know, Sister Raquel, she's a great person. Father, yep, nope. It's going to be the books and you. So we put forth this effort that we may become a reflection of what Yahshua the Messiah, the example that he set, a selfless character and nature. He was not doing things for himself. He was doing it as the Father sent him. And everything he did, he served, he gave, he loved, he had compassion on people, you know, and even to those that's why I find it fascinating when he spoke to the Samaritan woman, the disciples are like, what are you doing talking to her? Well, you know, why not? That's what we're here for.
Yeah. The world glorifies anger, like even in the movies Incredible Hulk.
Mm-hmm.
Right, the whole character of Incredible Hulk, like when he gets angry, right? He's got all of that power. Right? It's glorified.
Yeah. And in this day and age with people with what do they call it? Self-esteem and so on and so forth. It's more about, you know, me and being accepted as I am and what I want to do. You know, like Johannes and others were pointing out, you know, people, the term now, your truth, you know. Johannes said, what is sin? And what is sin? You know, sin is something, a concept that people have known. So, but anyway, brethren, I just wanted to share some of these things with you. And these things were triggered by the conversations we had. And it didn't dawn, it really, I wasn't going into this. But yesterday, this person was talking about anger. And then I started thinking about what David spoke on. All of a sudden, I said, you know what? There were things I had been reading in last week and the week before. And I said I could just bring those up. So I hope that this adds on to what David presented when he spoke on temperance and discretion. Does anybody have any questions or any observations or things they would like to share concerning this topic? No? Alrighty then. Well, Yahweh bless you, and we'll be back at 3 o'clock for the main message given by Dennis.